Okay, folks, welcome to another Tuesday night lecture run by the Mid-Ulster Amateur Radio Club. You're very welcome to join us this evening, and if you're watching via YouTube, we're glad you found us on YouTube. Why don't you hit the like and subscribe button and you won't miss any more of our videos. This evening, we're joined by Peter, Lima Bravo Zero Kilo, who stumbled upon, will I say, maybe one of our lecture series back in the early days. It must have been single figures anyway. And he's going to be talking to us on an interesting transmitting station that his radio club's involved in. But Peter, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself, how you've ended up in Norway, and how long you've been licensed and that sort of thing before we start.
Well, that isn't in the script.
I like to throw in a few curveballs, but we want to get to know you. We want to know you before you start.
I'm not the message, but anyway, name's Peter Ebsworth, from southwest London, tiny place you might have heard of, called Wimbledon. Used to be a member of the Wimbledon District Radio Club as well. Anyway, I was licensed there in '68. Then I got Wanderlust and joined a company who also put their name onto radios, record players, radiograms, and radars, or it used to. And I ended up by joining the circuit. And the first place I travelled to was Norway. And guess what? I met a nice blonde girl, and now I can't get rid of her. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
And anyway, that resulted in a mortgage, house mortgage, and 3 kids. And I'm still here. I got the Norwegian call sign in the mid-90s, as I remember. Since then, I've been slightly active, but what is really taking into time now is organisation work, training, and trying to plan for future improvements. Oh, and giving talks as well. I've got one of the previous students of ours. I don't do the training courses on my own. That's with another guy, Per Dagfinn. Thingve. He's I managed to talk him into listening. Anyway, let's see. I'll do a share screen and see if I can get the red fluffy ball up again. You don't want to find out any more about me, do you?
No, absolutely. We'll let you relax now. Peter, whenever you're ready, it's completely over to you. And again, thank you for joining us this evening.
Right. Now there's a picture. I take it you can all see it. And I've got to get the red fluffy ball up again. And where was it? Annotate.
Yeah, that's it.
And we've got to get the spotlight on. It's the spotlight you go for. And the spotlight with the red or purple or yellow or green or anything. Anyway, I want to tell you about the somewhat quirky club locale that FBK have. I'll explain a lot of the abbreviations and names as I go along. Right, the original title here is Huset med Alterare. It doesn't translate directly into English or many other languages, but what it means is the house or that house with all that strange stuff inside. We've heard this comment from visitors, especially younger people not accustomed to open technology. In. So you've unmuted me.
No, I don't know what happened there, but you're all good now. We can still hear you.
Okay. Anyway, the if you go along and pick up a a technological thing, a mobile telephone. Have you tried opening them? Or one of these games terminals, like an Xbox or a, there's so many screws. If you can find them, you just can't get into them and see how they work. And now, in the museum that we look after, you can see inside almost everything there if you want to. FBK, that means the Vereningen Bergen Kringkaster. So it's an abbreviation from this, and it means the Bergen Broadcaster Association. Nothing more expansive than that. The museum itself holds an eclectic mix of old transmitters, especially the old Telefunken and the Marconi ones, and lots of other stuff. Receivers, test gear, Edifon, wax roll dictation machines, valves, big valves, old valves, all sorts of stuff. The site was preserved, had a preservation order issued for it in 99, but this was modified in 2001. Right, and we go to the next picture. Next picture. Yeah, we can't go to the next picture. Yes, we can. So there we are. That's the real title. A pictorial story of the Bergen local broadcaster station and Vereningen Bergen Kringkaster. There we are. Now, I said I'd explain some of these abbreviations and stuff. Can you see the red, fluffy red ball still? No?
We can see the wee arrow.
Oh, okay. So I lost all the. Get it back. There we are. Get it back. Get it back. There we are. And well, that'll have to stay there then. Right. Now, there are lots of participants in this story. So I thought it'd be best to have one page or slide where I explain the names. And the first one is the Bergen Telegraph and then Telephone Company. That was started in about 1888 or 86. And they used to run the telephone system in the area. It was a private company. They had the concession to do this. They were tied into the national authority later in January of 47. And Telegrafwerke, perhaps they should be at the right at the top, but no. This was and is the National Telecoms Authority. They've since changed the name to Telewerke and then later on to Encom. That was that one. Bergen Kringkasting, now that was the company that was formed to run the actual broadcasting station. Norsk Rikskringkasting, this was the national authority that was established in 33, and they took on all the local transmitting companies or broadcasting companies. There were 7 or so around the country. And then we come to an interesting one, Bergensgruppen of NRRL. Now, Bergensgruppen, that's the group that's associated with the city of Bergen and surrounding area. NRRL, anybody, any idea what NRRL stands for? Oh, well, I get to keep the prize. No, William, you were going to answer. No, you weren't.
Yes, National Radio League, is it?
Yep, Norwegian Radio Relay League. They didn't want to copy the RSGB. Too much of a good thing in Europe. Anyway, this is the local amateur radio club for the Bergen area. And then we've got Askøy Municipal Council. That's the council for the island in which the museum is sited, or the transmitter is sited. And lastly is another important one, Society for the Teletechnical Collection. This is a steering group that was launched in 1979-80 to organize the museum. Oh, no, I can't do it. Roll. There we are. Now, The Telemuseum, as it used to be called, was quite active during the late 80s and into the late 90s, early 90s. And this is an extract from the brochure they had then. And you see there, Huset med Alterari, and an indication of some of the items in the collection. Morse key, a view inside the transmitter room, and that picture of a parabolic reflector. Now that is not on site, never has been, not that size anyway. The activities of the club now are looking after the old broadcasting station, including guiding every Sunday, researching and recording historical. Why does it keep on going to the next slide? Rigged historical data, running the broadcasting services, medium wave, AM and FM. And that's our watchword, preservation through activity. Try and keep the place active so it doesn't just disintegrate. And of course we run an amateur radio station for HF and VHF, UHF. And now we can go to the next one. Ah, I'm hearing somebody. Now, everybody knows what Bergen is, but in case you've forgotten, I'll tell you. Now, this little white area here, that's Ulster. And this big white area is the southern part of Norway. And inside the ring there is Bergen. Now, how do we get from Ulster to Bergen? Well, we'd have to fly to Heathrow and then fly to Bergen, if there are any flights going at the moment. The other route used to be across the North Sea by ferry from Newcastle. Used to have colleagues that travelled to and fro from Belfast to the southern part of Norway, farther south than Bergen. And it was every 3 months they'd disappear for a month. Right, what's next on the script? Now, Bergen Scriptman became involved in using the site as a museum after they just held an exhibition of telecoms and technical subjects at the old Bergen Museum in 1979. Instead of allowing the exhibits to be dispersed after the exhibition, the organising group, including Jens Fiksdal, he was the radio amateur, and Olaf Ferrevik, he was a technical controller in the Bergen teledistrict. They used to run telephones and television and radio in different departments, the actual dissemination of the radio programs. Anyway, these people arranged for storage in a depot in Bergen and also in the old transmitter building. And they became part of the core of the Society for the Telecoms Technical Exhibition or Collection, and continue building up the museum in the buildings and on site. And now we can carry on. The site had been owned and run by the Telegrafværket or Televerket, and the growing museum was well supplied with telephone items, radio items, and some items from Nera, which was a local manufacturer of radio link systems. And guess what? A small group of pensioners were entrusted with developing the site. They were interested, of course, and some also some radio enthusiasts, and they took on the tasks of organising and looking after these. But we don't last forever. They planned and organised very well, but the organisation didn't keep up with them. Although they got things sorted out and were open for schools and other visitors, it didn't last for very long, and died its death. I won't say died its death, but it went into hibernation in the 90s. But it must have been very interesting because there were 2 or 3 of the old telephone boxes, different sorts of telegraph, telephone poles. Just think, and go into a museum and look at that. Parabolic reflectors and radomes and all stuff that have been deemed not usable anymore, and instead of just being thrown away, it was preserved on site. And it was said that it gave a good idea of the techniques at the time. In fact, the local newspaper got quite worked up over this, and they inquired several times whether the site was going to be a new Gunhilly. They were a bit over the mark there, but that's the way of journalists. They have to keep up the sensation quota. You might think that telephone poles aren't much suited to a museum. Well, if you're ever in southern England, take a day to visit the Amberley Museum near Arundel. It used to be also called the Chalk Pits Museum, and you can have a look at some, for some people anyway, interesting displays of telephone systems and equipment and telegraph poles and insulators. Right. Now, where we got to? Some of the club activities, and we go to, no, that's the wrong one. Back where we are. Now, here we are. This was the first site of the transmitter, the original site. Why do you go back there? Move that up there. The first trial of broadcasting in the Bergen area was made in 1925 by a private company, AS Bergen Kringkasting. I've already mentioned them. Some 7 companies, persons and group with initial shareholders, including the local telephone company, who I also mentioned, and the Bergen Radio Amateur Club. I just think that was the Amateur Radio Club were behind the first broadcasting station, not only in fact in Bergen, but also quite a lot of other places around Europe and in fact around the world. But in the later part of the 20s, the two interests were separated by legislation, so that amateurs interested in one-to-one communication, they were given the short waves, and the ones that were interested in broadcasting, they were allowed to play around on the long waves. The more significant members of Bergen Radio Amateur Club at that time included a man called Holst and another one called Riek. And they didn't have any call signs, they just chose their own ones. Then the 3 main people involved in setting up the broadcasting company were, there was a government minister, Konov, an engineer called Sigurd Indrehus, and a manager and program host called Ola T. Holst. It was the same Holst as in the Radio Amateur Club. Now you can see this picture. There's the tower in the middle. That was the radiator for the transmitter. It was fed as a monopole and against an earth mat of unknown dimensions. Now there's no signs of any excavation or digging in the grass or the path there, so it must have been a somewhat rudimentary one. Anyway, that lasted from the beginning of December in 1925 through to May, June in 1926. Now there is one picture of the transmitter equipment. This is, one source quotes this as a 250 watt rig, but all the other sources say a 500 watt transmitter. A somewhat rudimentary setup there as well. This was made by Standard Electric, and that was part of their contribution to the startup of the broadcasting company. Now this is the second site. In 1926, they inaugurated the service from the new telegraph building. The telephone company had got their own site going right in the centre of Bergen. You see them 2 masts and the T antenna strung between them. The antenna used, being a T design, was basically a two-short vertical radiator brought close to resonance with a top dressing or capacitive hat. Now, if you look carefully, you can see that the top dressing is done in the form of two sausages, if you like. I always used to think they were very impressive on seagoing liners, a sausage antenna, and I wanted to get one. And it's only recently I found out how ineffective they are as transmitting errors. The Bergen Telephone Company, of course, were the active shareholders, so that's why the site that they put up the mast on top of the two masts on top of their building. We have on record that at least 3 different frequencies were used in the period from 25 through to late 26 at least. This was probably to avoid the co-channel interference from other news stations popping up all over Europe. It was much a case in those days that there were 2 listeners, 2 sorts of listeners. There was a group that complained that their local services were interfered with by the nasty foreign stations, and the other group complained that their listening to the interesting foreign stations was interfered with by the noisy local transmissions. We still get that. But getting TV programs and radio programs through a fiber optic cable certainly solves a lot of that problem. And DXing is a doddle. I mean, I can turn on the radio and twiddle the knob and pick up anything from Germany, Ireland, Japan if I want to. But they don't give QSL cards away anymore. Right. Now there's another view of the telegraph building and more of the park. The antenna doesn't stand out so well, but you can just make it out across there. And that's a sketch of the antenna, a bit moved a bit. But this was the heading from the Programbladet, or Radio Times if you like. The heading was decorated with a picture of that T antenna. The broadcasting company ran their own Radio Times, if you like, and that started in December and ran right through to 1933 when they were taken over, and then it became a national one. Right, let's see now these 3 sites are. Now, remember I showed the picture of the first one. That was a place called Frederiksberg, right out on that peninsula there. And the second site was right in the center of Bergen here. Now the site we're at, the station was moved to in the late 30s, as out here. That's the island of Askøy, and that's approximately where the transmitter is, or was and is. So gives much better coverage. The 2 sites in here really only covered this center of the town. They were transmitting, of course, on 266 kilohertz. Kilocycles. They didn't use kilohertz in those days. It was all kilocycles. Now, what happened was that while the transmitter site was here in Bergen, that stayed there from 26 through to 37 actually. But in 1933, it was admitted by the government and the society on the whole that broadcasting was too much of a responsibility just for local commercial interests to run. It was definitely in the sphere of national interest, and so they had set up a broadcasting authority, very much like the BBC, and this was called NRK. They started in June of 1933, and it took over control and running of the different transmitter sites around the country and supplied them with common programming. Of course, before then, each station ran their own programming. They used to borrow and share a bit, but mostly between Oslo and Bergen, but the other stations got a share at Look In now and again. But this local broadcasting, that was so important, certainly for Bergen, that they were allowed to have their own local transmitter on the third site. So that meant that when they actually got it going, they'd need 2 transmitters and 2 antennas. The big transmitter for the regional transmissions that covered a lot larger area than just this was ordered from Telefunken in Germany. And for local programming, a smaller transmitter, or less powerful one, was ordered from Marconi Wireless Telegraph Company in Chelmsford. And the 2 call signs used were LKB for the big one and LLE for the lower power one. Right. This is what the transmitter site looked like in the early 90s. The sun was even shining then. And you can see the lower half of the northwesterly mast there. Very decorative with the red and white painted sections. But now the museum has moved into the building has moved into the museum activity, and you can see the 2 parabolic dishes there as part of the display, and there's something else going up there. We're not quite sure what that one was. And the telephone kiosks, they were placed outside along here when they came in. Where we got to there. The building was clad in wooden paneling at that time to help reduce the weathering effects on the concrete structure inside. It was later taken away in some people regard that as a mistake. This is a idea of the layout inside the upper story. It's 1.5 stories. You've got a transmitter room here, and then the machine room and switch room here, high voltage section, and the day room and office here. And in the lower section, you've got the an unexcavated area and a transformer room, and the room for the cooling section. Now, this used to be a storeroom. It's now used for displaying different telephone exchange stuff. And look here, a tiny little box for the Marconi transmitter. That's all the room that got, but the Telefunken one took up all of that space up there. We've got a few pictures handed to us from the early days. These are 2 of them. This gentleman here is uncle to one of the present members. And over here we've got some sort of arrangement inside the transmitter room before it got going, because afterwards there was a safety barrier in the way. But these are all people that worked on the site either during the construction period or afterwards. One of these is supposed to be the manager that took over, and it is said to be one of these 2, but we can't say any more on that at the moment. This is one of the old workers many years later revisiting the transmitter room. It was about 1993. He was working. He was one of the people that helped set up the museum, make notes, etc. He used to be the technical boss of the NRK division, looking after transmitters and plant. You can see here, now that's the PA for the Telefunken, and these are the antenna matching circuits. That's the resonant one, and there's matching thereafter. There's a big tank over there, far in the distance, and the antenna connection goes out here up to a glass hemisphere up in the wall. Notes are made about this one. That gentleman's name is Leif Anderson, I think I said that. He's also provided several filmed interviews with separate companies, which we have access to now, and use it as a source of records for the museum. Now, this is the control desk for the telefunken transmitter. The are just big switches here, really, and pilot lights, a couple of meters. There is a remote control facility in here, and it's quite impressive because there's a small hand wheel. In fact, there are 4 in this panel at the back, which you can't see. And they have got mechanical linkages, 2 of them to the heater dynamometers, and 2 of them go to the high voltage transformer and cooling arrangements. Now, the low signal power stages of the telefunken are in these panels, or behind these panels here. There's something like a 100-watt driver amplifier behind this one, and the oscillator is behind here, and also the audio section behind this one. But you turn around and you get to see this. This is the PA itself. That's another view, looking more or less along the line of the units. That's the PA transmitter there. I think I managed to turn on this slide view presentation, and I can't turn it off now. Thought I had done. Anyway, we'll just have to struggle on. Now, the power amplifier has 2 halves. There are 2 identical stages, or were. The water cooling sleeves here and here are repeated on the other side, mirror fashion. And up here is a V arrangement of switches to swap over the whole high power section to the or from the modulating transformer and to the antenna. It must have been quite fun switching over. These are part of the neutralizing arrangement, these coils, and so is this nicely formed neutralizing capacitor. There's 2 aluminium sheets, not thin, they're about a centimeter thick each of them, and in between is a centimeter thick piece of Paxolin, I suppose, and there's also some air clearance as well, and there are screws to adjust it on the central pillar. So that was the neutralizing. The station was first started transmitting on 266 kilocycles, as I mentioned. It was changed to 282 kilocycles during the occupation, and then returned to 266 kilocycles in 1945. In 1950, under the Copenhagen plan, the frequency was changed to 890 kilohertz in the medium wave. The telefunken center was taken out of service eventually in 1966 and replaced by a Philips 10 kilowatt set. This stood in a corner of the, in the corner over here, which has been replaced by the amateur radio station now. There we go, and another one. Now that's another view of the RF amplifier. You can see the V switching arrangement. That's the modulator section. Again, identical sections here, and the feed to the PA and the feed from the modulator here. Go back, go back, go back. And the 2 barrels here are part of the antenna matching arrangements. What else I say about that? Nothing. I mentioned the cooling blocks. They're identical cooling blocks there on the valves, and the valves over here on the modulator. The modulator had been modified at one stage, I think it was in the 50s, and so it had 2 more modern valves in it, and they needed much less cooling apparently. Or they had more effective cooling, one of the 2. And we go on to the, now, oh yeah, just one thing here. Now I said there was a safety barrier. Guess where that is? the ropes. That was the only safety barrier. The posts and the ropes, oh, and the sign here. That's all they had. When they got visitors in the 50s, certainly they used to take an old fluorescent tube and walk towards the rope barrier. Oh, you can't go any farther because you'd be in danger of lighting up. It certainly worked because a lot of people have mentioned this to us, visitors coming in. I was one time we were outside cutting the grass, and should we say, a very adult lady stopped and talked to us, and she mentioned that she'd gone into the station and asked for some help with maths homework, and she'd gotten it and gotten quite comfortable in there, and had various tales she could relate about what they got up to in there. Anyway, we think this is a sort of HMS bonanza, having the rope across there as the barrier, a safety barrier. But one thing about the building is that it's very much a kind of temple to technology. It's not a case of the technology is inside a box. It's there, it's open. You can walk up now and go and look at it. You can even touch it because there's no voltages on it. Very much different to the Marconi one, hidden away in behind grey panels. Lots of meters to look at, admittedly, but you can't get inside and admire the blue light in the PA valves. Let's go back to this a bit. This is in the corner of the transformer room down in the basement. Now this used to transmit on 355 kilohertz kilocycles. That's in 1937, and moved to 1116 kilocycles in March 1950. It couldn't use the main T antenna. It had its own one. Now this was through a connection out through the basement wall here. A smaller glass hemisphere was fitted into the wall, and a bit of copper tubing went over to that, and outside a cable was hung or suspended, sloping up to the northwesterly mast. I'll demonstrate that a bit better later on. The Marconi transmitter had screening on the front, screening on the sides with wire mesh, and on this side as well. No screening over the top, but the floor was full of steel and copper wire. So that is a good screen on its own. There was one, should we say, the local station was off the air from sometime in 1941 to 1943. Now we're uncertain whether this was because of an uncurable fault, which is suggested, or just because it didn't fit into the transmitter plans, or was just started being modified. We've heard all of these suggestions. We can't find any records yet to back that up. Another factor in this, of course, is that the occupying administration had confiscated all wireless receiving sets, or so they said, believed. Thus making it much more difficult for the populace to listen to any broadcasts from the transmitter, local or national, regional, or from London, on London calling, and you hear the V signal, boom, 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 boom. And the shortwave service that was transmitted from Northeast America. I think it was in Massachusetts somewhere. These were the main sources of external information during the occupation. Now, I said that the occupying administration had confiscated all wireless receiving sets, and so people were required to hand them at the police stations. Now, what do you do if you're told to hand over your radio set? Do you put on your best bib and tucker and then take the radio underneath your arm and toddle off? Or do you open up the back of the radio, take out the chassis, put a few stones inside the cabinet, hide the chassis, and then toddle off with this box with a couple of rocks in under your arm. A lot of people did the latter. It was necessary to find ways of getting outside information, because as the regional service was carrying a lot of Soldatensender programming, it wasn't really interest to people that were waiting for the end of the occupation. Anyway, that was one of the sources of the secret radio receivers. The components in the transmitter are just as impressive as the those in the Telefunken, although they are a bit smaller. The two transmitter valves here, this is a final amplifier, they're go back. MT7A types. Now, those two valves there have got molybdenum anode blocks inside. And the driver valve, which is way over here, is an AC52 type. And the modulator valves, which are in the cabinet over here, are MT9Ls. They were the MT9s were the types used by 2LO for the oscillator stage. Do you know, I think this sounds a bit like a Monty Python script. Anybody else got any ideas about that? Oh, well, no feedback. I'll just keep going. The proof of origin. This Marconi, we'd like to get it going again, but if you know anybody who's knows a bit about repairing these, we'd be glad to get in contact with them. And that's the model number, and that's the serial number. So there are another 40,000 of them had been installed around the place, maybe. So there must be a bit of information. We've got a set of drawings by the look of it. All we need is a bit of time and help. Now, transmitters are no good without antennas. Now you see this picture of the antenna. This was taken before 1940. Now the reason we know this is that it's in black and white. All photographs taken before 1940, they turn up in black and white. It just happens that way. The masts, in fact, as they were, 250 meter high ones. They were spaced at 195 meters. Now the actual antenna in between was a T antenna, again a T, suspended between them. The masts were 97 meters on either side of the transmitter building, nicely placed. Now this will give you roughly an idea of the sort of takeoff the L antenna, no, the sloping antenna for the local transmitter had, straight across the field in towards the city, which you can see in the background here. That's the large part of the city. So you think about a sloper that has a lobe going out more or less in this case in the very right direction. And that was a picture from the newspaper of the day. We have contacted the Chelmsford City Museum now about this, and are looking forward to sharing information with them when they come back online. It hopefully will be in the course of the spring. Now this is a view from the southeasterly mast towards the northwesterly one, and here is approximately where the sloper antenna was attached, going down towards the transmitter building. So it's about 120 meters up and 95 meters out, and that makes it, come on, who knows Pythagoras? That's about 160 odd meters long, which is an appreciable part of the wavelength for, was it 366? No, 3. Do you know, I can't remember these numbers. 266, never mind. You get a rough idea of how the surrounding area was back in the 60s. That's when this picture was taken. It was taken by one of the workers actually from climbed up the mast to do some work there. He had another story to tell. He used wooden clogs for when he was working. And one time he dropped one of them, so he had to climb down. He tried climbing down with one clog and one bare foot, or with socks on, but he ended up by taking the other clog off. He said it was easier, but it must have hurt. The T of the antenna was made up like this. You had wire rope or wires to over to the mast, a yoke affair to spread the load out to the actual radiating part or the capacitive hat part of the antenna was formed like this. This was 8 meters wide, and each side of this was 34 meters long. And then the yoke was spread out or spread in to the right rope over to the other mast. Now on the southeasterly mast there was a winch arrangement which was used for tensioning. It must have been quite an arrangement to get the thing to stay horizontal. We haven't got any drawings of that, or haven't found them yet, but we know of somebody that should be able to explain it to us. And we're going to get in contact with them after this meeting restrictions are over. Now this is an aerial view of the site. Here's the transmitter building, southeasterly mast, and the northwesterly one. And you see the road here. Now that was more or less a path, or maybe a cart track back in the before the Bergen period. Now that had to be widened to at least a road, so that they could bring all the materials up to the site back in 1936. We think that work on that may have started in 1935 actually. Now coverage, the first two sites, they gave more or less this sort of coverage, and no records available, but there are suggestions and comments that have been made to us and that we found that this was more or less it for the good hard fully quiet in signal, and further out here where the terrain allowed it, then you've got a slightly noisier signal. But it certainly covered these two sites covered the city and the suburban sprawl down here. The third site was of course there to help fill up over the northern part and out into the outer islands. Now before I carry on, there's an interesting little bit of information that comes along here. The transmitter site, when it was first established, it drew its electrical supply from the mainland. The supply network on the island just wasn't up to anything like the energy requirements. We consider it's 20 kilowatt transmitter, so you've got at least 20 kilowatt of heat to be dispersed, and another 10 kilowatts maybe in lost energy. So supply had to be about 50 kilowatts up to. So they had their own supply from the mainland, somewhere in this area. Now the only recorded act of sabotage, if you like, or warlike occurrences occurred the course of the middle of April in 1940. In fact, on the 18th of April, right at the start of the occupation, the electrical supply to the station was cut through just below the shoreline, and the ends dispersed in the sea. It's not recorded as to whether the telephone line, which carried the program material over to the station, was also cut. It might well have been, but it's just not known. Anyway, that electrical supply cable was repaired in the course of just over 2 weeks and was back on the air by the 4th of May. The occupying authority, of course, organized it We have that on record. Right, the next picture. Now this is the proposed coverage area from that third site out into the North Sea and over to the Shetlands. Now, most of the listening public then would have been fishing vessels and other shipping in the area. Of course, for a fishing industry, the access to weather forecasts is very important, so they can run for cover or turn into the weather if there is a bad weather forecast, pick up the nets. There have been not too many occurrences through the years of whole fleets being wiped out by unexpected weather changes. Anyway, also recipients of the weather forecast were the expats living on the Shetland Islands. There's quite a lot of Norwegians over there for shorter and longer periods. I've got a couple of acquaintances there right now myself. I also worked over there for a short while. Now, the the masts were a liability. There was no organisation or body that would continue maintaining them, so that we'd have a nice big antenna system to play with from the amateur station. So after a newspaper campaign, which might have been helped along with by the previous owner of the site wanting to reduce their cost burden, the masts were removed from the preservation order and dismantled in 2001. It was quite an activity. Helicopter to lift the sections down, to 3 men at times up in the mast, unscrewing sections and making them ready for lifting off. It's quite exciting. I think they were starting up at 150 meters. It's not like yours or mine 5 meter masts, or maybe we can stretch to 8 meters, or hanging off the top of the roof and hoping that the wife doesn't see you. Anyway, the sections were taken down and stored in front of the museum building, where they languished and rusted for some 16 years. There's a couple of pictures we've been given of the actual dismantling work. Loosen one off and then lift it away. This gives you an idea of the state they were in after 16 years. And in 2015, the 3 best sections, vertical sections, plus the supporting pyramid were prepared and installed again on the southeasterly footing. This now supports the amateur radio antennae. We're looking for a way to get the FM antenna up there now. It will give better coverage, certainly. Now, I must take a. The pyramid on top was ended up being installed on top of the mast in 2019. In the end, it was omitted back in 2015. We got antennas for MF bands 160, 80, 40 as dipoles, nest of dipoles, and we got also an end-fed half wave out there, an 8010 type, which comes down more or less directly towards the camera. I took this picture from the transmitter building. It is an active transmitter as well. We've got transmissions on medium wave. There's the frequency. Listen in, and if you can hear it, and make a report to the website. We'll send you confirmation. We also got the FM transmitter there. We also there's another radio station on site, Radio Northern Star, which transmits on 1611 and 5895 and shares the 5895 with us and the 93.8. The internet address is there for the association, and also our amateur station here, LA1ASK. There we go. For 1315, we run 200 to 700 watts or a 15-meter com rod, vertical. And on FM band, it's a 40-watt transmitter and a Slim Jim antenna. We're also planning to re-establish a scaled-down T antenna when we get find a contractor that will help us. Radio Northern Star, they transmit on dipole antenna that are strung between the trees, horizontal dipoles. That's the picture of the Comrod. We see a lot of these on cruise ships and larger vessels with the capacitive loading whips out to the side. And that's a picture of the Slim Jim. It's so slim you can't really make out any detail. Now this is inside the amateur station where the Philips one used to be. The site and the building is now open, being regarded as cultural heritage. We'll open every Sunday 11 to 1500-ish. We can stay open for a half an hour if nobody's got anything else to go to. Sometimes we just forget to go home. But we can open it up at other times if by arrangement. Now that's a picture of the station as it has been, an ICOM 7600, and that was the I think that's the one we use for the shortwave transmitting now. Since then we've got an FT101D, an ACOM linear, and last year we put in a permanent 22 meter and 70 centimeters FM DMR transceiver. Sound quality out of that doesn't match the big transmitter hall, so it doesn't get listened to very much. Got to get a better one or get a better speaker on it. It's quite small. Activities, we've of course got the guiding. We have cultural events, and between 4 and 10 times a year. We get a junk sale at least once a year. We turn the slide back, and it's we also transmit the QST LA, or the NRL news, if you like. What is it the RSGB call it? The bulletin, news bulletin? It's been some years since I've listened to that. The amateur station is also borrowed by members for their own operation and for contest operations as and when they want to. The transmitter hall is used for lectures and other Morse training and construction evenings even. And of course we do training there as well. And one activity, oh yeah, we've got a weekly sched that we run, and if you want to listen out for us, it's 1700 Zulu. That's now slipped to, what would it be? We're on at 1700 local time, so that's 1500 Zulu now. Yeah, 1500 Zulu on 3707. We'll probably end up at around 1400 Zulu by the in the course of a month, mainly because of QRM from other amateurs further south from us. There's quite a large number of them in Germany and Poland. We just can't compete with them. We're working on Skywave envies propagation for most of the QSO contacts. Right, now for the grasses, weeds and other plants, we've got a motorized what they call a scythe here, and when we're using it, we have to be careful we don't get the plastic fence away from around the transmitter site. That close-up of the comrade there, it shows that we're using some of the remains from a long wave beacon transmitter site here back in the 80s and 90s. Kongsberg Navigation had a long wave transmitter on site that was running correction data, transmitting correction data out to users in the North Sea and in the Norwegian Sea. And we took over the beehive there and the connection block here from that we just left on site. Anyway, we trim all that up once a year, a couple of days work. We'd appreciate help with that. If anybody wants a holiday and like to join in, please come along. We'll let you join us. We got that. Right, we also run a web SDR, Kiwi. There's the address. It is plagued by local noise in the evening. That started last week. Makes 30 meters impossible to use about now, I should think. But otherwise, it's quite quiet. It isn't actually on the transmitter site because they get too much interference from the other transmissions, but it's not too far away that we say it is on site. Cultural events doesn't just mean radio broadcasting, it also encompasses other stuff. We've got a permit from the council, or a remit from the council is to open up for other activities there. In this case, a dance performance. This is City van Schijndel performing in the Transformer Room. Other shows have been choirs have performed here, accordion groups, a blues group came in and entertained us back in March. We can't get a large audience in, but we can certainly get 20 to 30 in. That's what we've got chairs for, and more standing. Of course, these activities are curtailed now. We're also a member of the cultural round table for the ASCE, and it opens up more financing and invites to other activities. One of the things we've joined in with is a cultural exhibition. Well, it was the first time last year. We were invited to come along and present our message to the populace in a local gym school. This happens every year, except this year. The visitors were expecting handicrafts, i.e. knitting, jams, wood turning and forming, and we gave them a very different experience. Some of the people were very open, and a few others just couldn't cope with us, I suppose it's one way of saying it. And they looked right past us and marched through. It was a trying occurrence, actually, because we did try and set up continuous broadcasts for this exhibition, which ran over the weekend. But we couldn't actually see the receive the transmissions ourselves, because the building was a steel framed one, and even if we were right up against one of the windows, we just couldn't get any signals through it, not to use anyway. And it was only 6 kilometers away from the transmitter. So we've got a plan. We're going to have to run cables for an external antenna next time, which should be next year if we're lucky. Another activity we take part in is the Hobbies exhibition in Bergen. again, a steel frame building, so we know what we're up against there. But then we run a demonstration of AM signals on medium wave with a low power demonstration bench from like we used to use at colleges, which is all produced ready for it. We also do interviews when we go to these exhibitions, live interviews, but interviewees often want to hear themselves, and that is just impossible to arrange. So I think what we've arrived at is that we do repeats of the interviews so that people can at least get a chance of listening in. We're also active for JOTA, Jamboree on the Air, which is this coming weekend. We've not got any activity there, unfortunately. We've more or less exhausted the local schools or local groups. They haven't wanted to come to us the last couple of years. This newspaper, which was taken in 2010, which is the last time we got them to come along, the newspaper journalist. You can see the actual operating room for the amateur station is not very big. I think if we put another 2 scouts in there, it'd be full, very full. We've got a whisper receiver for the that runs from the Kiwi site, and this is on 30 meters, and that's just one sample that I took out from there. Pretty good coverage. That one was during the day, so we don't get the DX from America or Australia showing up. And we go on. This summer we had some activities there. There's Christian, Alistair, Canadian, Runa and Ingvar, trying to see what Christian's up to on his transceiver hidden under here. He had a magic little Zegu 90 transceiver, which also has a facility to do antenna analyzing, and you can adjust your antenna with that. Not just tune up, you can actually adjust, see how bad it is. And that's another participant demonstrating a lifeboat antenna. You get a vertical support out of that, and in fact they all the lifeboat antenna supports, they have a wire inside as a radiator, so you can just clip on the to a base and you've got yourself a transmitter site. Now you might think that FBK is the only amateur club in the area. Far from it. Bergensgruppen, LA, we have the call sign LA1B. They've had it since 1949. They've got their, or our, HQ and club locale at Totland, which is south of the city. FBK is really just a specialist group that convened to take advantage of the transmitter site and the building, and you can say we have a more than average interest in history. Also, being on the west side of the city, it's more convenient for some of us. Anyway, the Bergensgruppen, most of us at FBK are also members in the Bergensgruppen, so we get to use both of the sites. At the Bergensgruppen clubhouse, it's in much ways a lot freer, and that we can erect all sorts of antenna there for longer periods, and you don't need to be ready to show visitors around at the drop of a hat. The clubhouse is used for contests, barbecues, antenna experiments, etc., 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 meetings, lectures. As there are some bedrooms there as well, you don't need to travel home between contest shifts and then come back, so you can stay in a contest mode. Oh, quite fun, really. Go away for the weekend and forget all the troubles at home. The available antennas cover 160 meters to 6 meters, plus 2 meters and 70 sems. The group also run the 2 meter and 70 sem analog repeaters, LA5BR, which is a FM and fusion on RV60, and you've got 97.4 hertz CTCSS. We've also got a UHF one, LA7BR, a D-Star node, LD5BG. Please use this, it's underused. And another 2-meter one, north of the city on RV62. The most recent addition is LD5BR, a DMR repeater on the Brandmeister network. Make a note of this, ID is 242210. Don't forget this. The Bergen's Group website is there, la1b.no. You find all the information there that you could want for. And if you're coming to Bergen, drop a message there or on our call website, and we can make arrangements to accommodate you. This is the front page of our website and the address. There's a picture of the building as it is now. That's the one with the wooden cladding on it still. That's our nice logo. That is protected, by the way. We registered that. To find out what's coming up in the coming weeks with us, there's a diary which is reached, or a calendar up here, and there's also in the news column here. The same for the, or corresponding for the Bergen's Group one, they've got a list down here of events and some blogs on this side. Right, what else have I got to say about this? Yes, there's a little bit of information on English for this site. I'm slowly working translating more of it into English. It is a bit on the back burner though. Right, I've covered that. Right, some rosy future prospects. Increased activity with meetings and or video conferences. I expect it'll be video conferences. And broadcasting. We've got contesting, JOTA, when the restrictions are lifted. Lecturing. These will be video lectures. Now, it's on the cards that we're going to be included in the Museum West network and get access to more resources, museum active resources. And this will open up for contact with the other museums in the Bergen area. There are 6, 7, 8 smallish museums which are of interest anyway, especially if you're interested in wartime history. We're also increasing contact with other museums of radio techniques. I found the list on Practical Wireless back in May with a list of those, and I've got our details included in that now. We're also having entered correspondence with several of those. Putting up the replacement T antenna and next year's removal of undergrowth. And that, gentlemen, is all I've got for you at the moment. I can go around again if you like, but I don't think many people will be interested by that.
Very good indeed, Peter. Very good indeed. I must say, we have a transmitting station that's quite close to us. It's about 7 miles, maybe 4 or 5 miles, not even 7 from my home QTH, and it has a massive antenna, quite similar to the ones that you guys had there before they were taken down. And I've always wondered what the inside would look like, and I almost feel as if I don't need to know anymore because you've given a good tour with the pictures. But we had a question, Peter, that came in on the chat, and it was from Steve Golf 3 Zulu Papa Sierra, who's with us this evening. And the question is there much AM, medium wave or long wave broadcast left in Norway?
There's only us.
You're the final
on medium wave.
Final line.
Well, we're not the final one. We started up again. We started up again it was while I was still working, and so I wasn't paying too much attention to what went on here or at the transmitting site. Oh, just bear with me. The medium wave broadcasting was shut down in 1978. The frequencies that Norway had at the time were taken over by other transmitters on continental Europe. And anyway, Norway by then had built up a more than adequate network of FM transmitters, mostly on mountain top transmitter sites. The FM network was continued until 2014, I think it was started to be dismantled, because then DAB was coming in. We were allowed to start or restart transmitting in was it 2012 or 2013? I don't have that information at my fingertips, or even on them. But we just used to put on the old Western Electric transmitter, 260 watt one. We'd put that on Sundays for a couple of hours, and it also, in the end, we started putting it on by remote control a couple of evenings a week. But being an old bit of electronics, it started failing. It reached the end of its bathtub and trying to climb out the other end. So in the end, we got hold of an FET Class E transmitter, which will run up to a kilowatt and is about the size of a 4U 19-inch rack. And that is a 1 kilowatt transmitter. And that's what we run now. There is talk of some restricted service area low power transmitters being allowed for in the near future, but we don't know what the status of these is at the moment. So for the moment, we run the only AM transmitter in Norway on 1314. The one on 197 in kilohertz in northern Norway was shut down in the winter, and the mast is going to be demolished at some stage if it hasn't been done already. So I hope that answers John's question. Was it John? No, Steve.
Steve. There we go. Great.
Steve.
Great. Does anyone else have any questions there they want to ask?
I've got one further comment. We've got one member in the society or association that is he's been a shortwave listener, a very eager shortwave listener for many years, both long wave, medium wave, and shortwave. And he is well versed in wandering the halls of bureaucracy, and it's very largely to his honor that we managed to acquire these transmitting permits, licenses. So now, in fact, we run the medium wave transmitter and the FM one, and we can let out some transmitting time to other people as it happens. So the field's open. Feel free, come and contact us. We'll let you on, providing you fill the requirements. No, seriously, we do have vacant time. Back to you, Dave.
Terry, G3PFC, hello.
Hello, Terry.
Hello there. You were looking for expertise on the old Marconi transmitter.
Yes.
There is a chap, G4OYX, Dave Porter.
G4
OYX.
Yes.
And he does. He's ex-BBC transmitters in the days when it was BBC transmitters. He's done a number of presentations on YouTube, and if you If you search that name and call sign, add transmitter engineer and BBC maybe, you'll find them. He's a personable bloke. I was on training course with him right back at the early days of our careers. I have lost contact with him effectively, but if he doesn't mind me passing that name and call sign on, he might be worth having a word with.
I certainly look him up now.
Great stuff.
If you listen to him on YouTube, he takes you on various tours around transmitter sites. And, he's got a passion for it. It was not just a job. And every transmitter engineer I know, or broadcast engineer that I know, has got a passion for it. So unusual there.
Get him over for a tour then, Peter. Get him booked in, and he can maybe fix a transmitter while he's there. Jeff, GIZO-LAM has asked there, what is it that's actually transmitted on the AM? Is it music? Is it news? Is it stories or lectures? What is it that's sent out, Peter?
I'm very glad someone asked that. Transmitted material, program material, isn't really a central interest for any of us that are involved in the association. So that's one of the reasons why we've opened up for allowing external users in for the transmitters. We do produce some programs ourselves, but quite honestly, we don't have the capacity. Not all of us have the interest of it. Maybe in time we'll start recording things like this lecture, change it a bit and record it, and then we can transmit that as well. But what we do transmit are recordings of old programs, which we are allowed to do, or some old programs, the interviews, from historical interviews, and why don't you just have a listen and find out?
Indeed, that's the best way, isn't it? That is the best way.
Unfortunately, I'm in a place that I'm outside the ground wave coverage of the transmitter. I've got a couple of mountains in the way, so I don't really get the ground wave coverage is foreshortened in my direction. And I get much better coverage from Spain, so I can't hear the programs from there. In fact, I have to drive for about half an hour before I can get into the coverage area. So I don't listen to it at all, unless I'm on site. What was I going to say now? Coverage from the medium wave transmitter is good. We've got DX reports we just had one from Finland on distances 1,500 kilometers. Spain, Germany, of course, a lot of DXs in Germany. And they've got some quite good installations as well.
Great stuff, great stuff. Okay, anyone else, any burning questions there to ask before we end? Maybe not.
Deathly hush.
You've informed us so well. We know everything about it now, Peter.
You know that's not true, Dave. Things I've hopped over.
No, can I seriously, on a serious note, can I thank you, Peter, for taking the time to put together the presentation? And our Tuesday night lectures are open to all interesting topics, not just particular areas of operation on amateur radio or anything like that. So it has been very interesting to hear about the old transmitting station, the location, the many environmental works that goes on once a year, and how long it takes to cut the grass, Peter. It has been very much enjoyable and really interesting to listen to, and especially more so because it's coming from Norway as well. A truly international experience this evening. So from us, thank you very much. We hope everyone will join us again in 2 weeks' time on the 27th of October there for our second lecture this month from Bob, who's another international. We have two internationals in the month. Bob comes from Cyprus, and he's going to be speaking to us on bandpass filters, what they do and how to make your own and everything else like that. So that's going to be an interesting one. 27th of October at 7 o'clock, our usual time, and everyone will be very much welcome to join us. So Peter, again, thank you very much from the team here. We do appreciate it, and we'll get speaking to you soon.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for taking it. Thank you.